Welcome back to another Swordmaster Publications Bible study. My name is Ernie Lawrence. We're going to be studying this evening Deuteronomy chapter 2. It's a continuation of the thoughts of Deuteronomy chapter 1, where Moses is reminding the children of those who had come out of Egypt and who had died in the wilderness over the course of the 40 years. These are their children now, and they're about to go into the Promised Land. They're going to cross the Jordan. They're going to fight against Jericho, and we're like right before that happens. Now remember, there was a period of time in between the writing of the book of Numbers, which was in the 39th year of the wandering, and here we are in the 40th year of wandering. So a few more things have happened since then. And also remember, by this time Moses is about 120 years old, and Joshua has already been named as his successor, as kind of the shepherd of the people. And so most likely what we have here is a case where Moses is dictating and Joshua is recording. In fact, we know at the end of Deuteronomy, the book records the death of Moses, and so Joshua probably finishes it off the last little bit, of course by inspiration of God, but finishes off the last little bit without Moses actually dictating anything to him. So let's go ahead and get started into Deuteronomy chapter 2, and we'll finish up with this summary here, and then Moses is going to lead their thoughts to a new direction. And there's a lot in Deuteronomy that's very, very interesting that points to the New Testament. So Deuteronomy chapter 2 and verse 1, Moses said, "Then we turned and took our journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, as Jehovah spake unto me. And we compassed Mount Seir many days." And that Seir, of course, is Sinai. "Jehovah spake unto me, saying, You have compassed this mountain long enough. Turn you northward. And commanded thou the people, saying, You are to pass to the coast of your brethren, the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir, and they shall be afraid of you. Take you good heed unto yourself, therefore." So they came to the land of Edom, and remember, they were told, don't go. They were going to buy passage through. They were just going to go on the main road. They weren't going to go to the left or the right. They were going to buy any food that they happened to eat. And Edom said no. And they met them at the border and had their military arrayed there and made them go around. So God said, "Meddle not with them, for I will not give you of their land, no, not so much as a foot breadth, because I have given Mount Seir unto Esau." I'm sorry, Seir is not Sinai. Seir is the mountain in Edom. Horeb is Mount Sinai. My apologies. But anyway, he says, "Because I have given Mount Seir unto Esau for a possession." Now remember, Esau is the brother of Jacob. He is a descendant of Abraham. And so God has given a portion of the land. And remember the statement that was made to Isaac and to Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah, when the twins were not yet born, that the older would serve the younger, and they were still in the womb. We read about this in Romans chapter 9, and this is the beginning of that fulfillment, in that Esau never served Jacob, but Jacob in fact served him. He served him food. He worked in the kitchen with his mother, and Esau was the one that went out and did all the hunting and was kind of a burly hunter type dude. And so the men never fulfilled individually the prophecy that was given about them in the womb. It was really a prophecy about their nations. And so Esau's nation, the Edomites, was going to be a satellite of Israel when they went into the Promised Land, and it would eventually become their servants. And we're starting to see this play out right here. So verse 6, "You shall buy meat of them for money that you may eat, and you shall also buy water of them for money that you may drink." So God says you are allowed to trade with them. "For Jehovah your God has blessed thee in all thy works of your hand. He knows you're walking through this great wilderness, these 40 years. So here we have confirmation that we are in the 40th year. They've been wandering for 40 years. We're coming to the end of that. "These 40 years Jehovah your God has been with you. You have lacked for nothing. And when we passed by from our brethren, the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, through the way of the plain of Elath, and from Ezion Gaber, we turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab." Now remember, Moab was part of the nation that was kind of causing problems for them, and there were some people in Moab that were problematic and whatever. But listen to what God says about the Moabites, because there's some nations here that are kind of circling around Abraham, if you will, and God does not want them to be touched. They're not the ones that are getting kicked out of the land. So they turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab, and Jehovah said unto me, Distress not the Moabites, neither contend with them in battle, for I will not give thee of their land for a possession, because I have given Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. So the Moabites were descended from the son of Lot. Remember, he had his 2 daughters after they fled Sodom and Gomorrah, and each of those daughters gave him a son, and those were the Moabites and the Amorites, I believe. There's a whole lot of Ammonites and Amorites. I always get those two mixed up. But anyway, so again, we have this satellite nation here that's being spoken of. But listen now what God through Moses says, and he's going to talk a little bit about the giants here. So I've given Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. The Edoms dwelt there in times past. So this was before. A people great and many and tall as the Anakims. Now the Anakims we already know are giants. So the Edoms were also giants. Verse 11, which also were accounted giants as the Anakims. But the Moabites called them Edoms. The Horims also dwelt in Seir before time. But the children of Esau succeeded them when they had destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their stead, as Israel did, into the land of his possession, which Jehovah gave unto them. So see, there was giants in all these lands. The Edoms, the Anakims, the Horims. You have Goliath and his 5 brothers, or his 4 brothers, are remnants. The 3 giants. And remember, when the spies went in 40 years before, they saw 3 giants. Not a whole bunch of them, but they saw 3 giants. And they're like, oh, there's giants in the land. And everybody got freaked out about that. The giants are mostly gone. The people who were not giants came in and wiped them out. Apparently giants are not all that hard to kill. Individually in battle, I'm sure they're fairly fierce, but it seems like more people versus these singular, fierce, big, strong dudes are more powerful, because we're going to see this multiple times where these nations come in and they wiped out the giants that were in the land. So the Edomites, the children of Esau, came in, took out the Horims. The Moabites came in and took out the Edoms, and they started clearing the giants out of the land. So there's not very many giants left at all. It says, verse 13, Now rise up, said I, and get you over the brook Zered. And we went over the brook Zered, and the space in which we came from Kadesh Barnea, remember Kadesh Barnea is kind of the starting point from the spies, until we were come over the brook Zered, was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war were wasted out from among the host, as Jehovah sware unto them. Okay, so Kadesh Barnea is where the spies went out and came back, gave the bad report. God cursed them for 40 years. So from Kadesh Barnea until they came over the brook Zered was 38 of those 40 years. And then by that time, all of the men of war, remember in the book of Numbers there at the very beginning, they counted 600-something thousand men that were men of war. And that whole generation died during this time. For indeed the hand of Jehovah was against them to destroy them from among the host until they were consumed. So it came to pass, when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, that Jehovah spake unto me, saying, You are to pass over through Ar, the coast of Moab, this day. And so they were going to go on the eastern side of Moab. To the west would be the promised land, but they would have to go over Moab, but they're going around to the eastern side. And when you come nigh over against the children of Ammon, distress them not. So Ammonites are the ones that are, the Ammonites and the Moabites are the ones that are from Lot, and the Amorites are the ones that were the bad guys that got destroyed. Distress them not, nor meddle with them, for I will not give thee of the land of the children of Ammon any possession, because I have given it unto the children of Lot for a possession. So there's the Ammonites. And again, verse 20, that also was accounted a land of giants. Giants dwelt therein in old time, and the Ammonites called them Zamzummans. Zamzummans. Ooh, that's hard to say. That's a lot of M's. So it was another kind of nation of giants that were taken out by normal-sized people like you and I. And so the giants were there, but they were systematically taken out. And I think God is kind of chiding the Israelites a little bit, telling them, look, you were afraid of these guys, but the giants that you're afraid of, they got taken out by the guys that are not so big that are in there now, that I'm going to help you take out. And so he's just kind of maybe, and it's not directly at these people, but to their parents. He's saying, like, your parents were scared of the giants, but the giants were taken out by all these people. But now we have three nations. We have the Edomites, the Moabites, and the Ammonites were all satellite nations of what was going to become Israel in the Promised Land, and eventually they became kind of vassal nations. They began to serve Israel, and it said the older would serve the younger. Came true. The Edomites served Israel for a while, but again, part of that prophecy was that later on they would throw off the shackles, and they would no longer serve Israel, and that comes to pass later on. Okay, so the Zamzumims, 21, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims, but Jehovah destroyed them before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead. So God is saying that He was there. He was providing for the children of Lot and helping them against these giants. Just as He would have helped Israel had they not been afraid going in 40 years before. And He did to the children of Esau which dwelt in Seir, when He destroyed the Horims from before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead even unto this day. And the Adams which dwelt in Hazarim, even unto Azza, the Caphtorims which came forth out of Caphtor, destroyed them and dwelt in their stead. So the Adams were another set of giants. All these giants somehow got on the other side of the flood. Again, it's silly to think of the idea of Nephilim being half angels that came down and corrupted man, and then God, because of that, sent a flood and wiped them all out, and only 8 pure humans got on the ark and made it to the other side, and then suddenly we have all these half angels again. That doesn't make any sense. There's no logic to that whatsoever. And again, the reason the giants could make it to the other side of the flood is because humans were giants in those days. There were giants. It doesn't say that there were some giants or there were giants among men, or no, there were giants in those days. They were the giants. Men lived to be longer, stronger, bigger, smarter. Everything about humans was physically better in those days, and the giants made it to the other side of the flood as Noah and his family. And so that genetic line, that property of the giants eventually adapted itself out as, again, the air pressure changed and the environment no longer could sustain them very well. It was not it's not as good a survivability thing to be a giant after the flood, when the atmosphere was not the same anymore. And so there is something to the idea of God helping these nations take out the giants, in that God was the one responsible for the flood, for the destruction of the canopy, and He was the one that made being a giant not as viable as being a smaller, what we think of as a regular normal human being, as we are today. So anyway, the giants were all wiped out, and so you had all of these people here, including the Caphtorims, came in and lived in their land. So He says, rise up, take your journey, and pass over the river Arnon. Behold, I have given into thine hand Sihon the Amorite. So there's the Ammonites were the descendant of Lot. Amorites, Sihon is the king of Heshbon, which is of the Amorites, and his land began to possess it and contend with him in battle. So that's what God commanded them to do. This day will I begin to put the dread of thee and the fear of thee upon the nations that are under the whole heaven. Who shall hear the report of thee, and shall tremble and be in anguish because of thee? So what is God saying? Today is going to begin the time when you will go in and conquer with my help, and you will be feared by the wicked nations. But you will also be a beacon of light and truth as my servants to all of the other nations that are not so wicked and that are surrounding you. And the idea is that Israel would go up and be a blessing to all of the nations around and teach them how to live the way that God wanted people to live. Now, they didn't do that. For a time, they did with David and a little bit with Solomon. We see this with the Queen of Sheba. But after Solomon, Israel fell into all kinds of horrible choices and became stiff-necked and went after other nations and wanted their wealth and their protection and to be in bed with them in a very literal sense in some cases. And it didn't last for very long. Verse 26, and I sent messengers out of the wilderness of Kedemoth unto Sihon king of Heshbon with words of peace, saying, let me pass through your land. I will go along by the highway. I will neither turn to the right hand nor the left. You shall sell me meat for money that I may eat, and give me water for money that I may drink. Only I will pass through on my feet. Okay, so this is the same message that they gave to a whole bunch of people. And it's not a lie, but this is how God hardens the heart of people. It's not a supernatural reaching in and flipping a switch inside of their minds and making them do anything. It's an external provoking of what the person is like, what they're like. And God knows what is necessary to provoke that kind of person. And so he sends them this message, say, hey, let us walk through. And some people reacted one way and some people reacted another way. Okay, so verse 29, as the children of Esau which dwell in Seir and the Moabites which dwell in Ar did unto me. He's reminding them of that. So he's given the same message just as the third nation that he's done this to. Until I shall pass over Jordan into the land which Jehovah our God gives us. So they're like, Amorites. I can't remember. Amorites. I will remember that one day. Amorites. We want to pass through. We're not here for you. We want to pass over the Jordan and go into the land that our God has promised us. Let us go through. And the king, Sihon, reacts exactly as God knew he would. And this is, again, the nature of the hardening of the heart. God hardens his heart by sending this message to him, knowing how Sihon would react. And so, verse 30, Sihon king of Heshbon would not let us pass by him, for Jehovah your God hardened his spirit. Not in a supernatural, direct, immediate sense, but hardened it by sending the message, knowing what kind of person Sihon was, and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into the hand, as appears this day. Okay, so again, it is very, very important to understand God does not override our free will, ever. He never, ever has overridden the free will of mankind, because that is the purpose of us being here, to choose God or not God. The hardening of his spirit, the making of his heart obstinate, was from an external providential perspective. That's how it was done. That's the only way that God does this. God, being omniscient, knows how it's going to play out. He says the right things. He does this to the Jews. Why did Jesus preach in parables while he was on earth? He preached in parables because he knew the Jewish leadership wouldn't understand, because they were an obstinate, stiff-necked, prideful people, and the parables would just anger them, and they would eventually murder Jesus for it, which was what needed to happen. That's why he spoke in parables, but he explained things to his disciples. And then later on, we get those explanations either through the writings of like Matthew and Mark and Luke and John, or we get them explained to us in Paul's letters, or however that works out. But we understand today what the meanings of those parables are. The Jews of that day didn't. God was hardening their hearts for the purpose that he had planned since Genesis 3:15. And so that's what's happening here. And Jehovah said unto me, behold, I have begun to give Sihon and his land before you, begin to possess, that you may inherit his land. And so Moses is still recounting history here. This isn't something that is yet future. This is Moses saying this is what has happened up to this point. That's kind of what the first few chapters of Deuteronomy are, is what has gone before. If you ever read a novel that's kind of in a series, I write my own novels this way, There's a little kind of pre-prologue section that's a what has gone before to help you kind of remember where everything is at. Well, that's what Moses is doing. So, verse 32, Sihon came out against us, he and all his people, to fight at Jahaz, and Jehovah our God delivered him before us, and we smote him and his sons and all his people. And we took all his cities at that time, and utterly destroyed the men and the women and the little ones of every city. We left none to remain. Again, to an extent, they are going in and wiping them out. They're not leaving any of their culture left. But there's also places where God has said drive them out. So utterly destroying them is utterly destroying them in the land. Part of that is driving them out of the land. So it isn't necessarily that they are actually killing every single one of these people, but they are utterly destroying them within the land, however that needs to happen. They do drive them out to an extent as well, and I'll highlight those places where it talks about that. Okay, so none were to remain in the land. Only they took the cattle, or only the cattle we took for a prey unto ourselves, and the spoil of the cities which we took from Aroer, which is by the brink of the river Arnon, and from the city that is by the river, even unto Gilead. There was not one city too strong for us. Jehovah our God delivered all unto us. Only unto the land of the children of Ammon, that's the Ammonites, the descendants of Lot, you came not, nor unto any place of the river Jabbok, nor unto the cities in the mountains, nor unto whatsoever Jehovah our God forbade us. So Moses here reminds of what God has done up to this point, even including Sihon. We're going to deal with one more that is now a looking back. In chapter 3, we're going to deal with one more looking back battle. Remember, Numbers was looking forward to the last few mop-up things before they crossed Jordan. Now we're in Deuteronomy. We're right before going across the Jordan. And so now we're looking back. Those last few things have been mopped up. Remember, there were 2.5 tribes that were going to stay outside, including half of the half-tribe of Manasseh, which was going to get the land of Og, king of Bashan. Bashan was all up in the northern area, north of Moab, north of Edom, way up towards the northern end by the Euphrates. Now we're going to get that land. Deuteronomy 3. It's a done deal. They talk about it having been done at this point. So the battle has already taken place, and God has already won for them. So anyway, that's Deuteronomy chapter 2. And we're going to continue with Deuteronomy chapter 3 as I have time. Thank you for joining us. Again, this has been Swordmaster Publications, and my name is Ernie. And if you have any comments, I'd love to hear them. You can leave them down below, or you can message me in any way that you have access to. And we'll see you guys next time.